Hi viewers, in this video I will describe how the driver's door got stuck open and how I replaced the worn out door hinge on my 2009 Jeep Patriot.
Not long ago my vehicle driver door was not working well even if the hinges were lubricated. One day the mechanism failed when I opened the door and it was not possible to close it properly. Normally the detent roller arm should have maintained the hinge at the third position, but the end of the arm moved on the other side of the roller. It could have been a very bad situation. Luckily, I had a large flathead screwdriver in my vehicle. I used it to push the detent roller arm back behind the roller to finally be able to close the door. Later, I closely inspected the lower hinge and it had to be replaced. I went to a U-Pull recycling facility nearby and I found this new version. To replace this type of hinge, it's not complicated. First, I undid the two 13mm lower nuts on the door side. After, I loosened this one on the upper side. I kept the last nut tightened to safely hold the door in place. By keeping the upper nut in place, I was still able to maneuver the lower section of the door. I jacked up the door to change the angle and add more room around the hinge. This also helped me to mark the position of the hinge with a permanent marker before removing the hinge assembly. The access to the bolts was tight, but there was enough space to insert a wrench or a ratcheting wrench. In normal condition, the spring system should not be dismantled like that. This is how the area looked without the door hinge. The old and the new parts are quite similar, but the end of the new detent roller arm is a bit longer to prevent it from getting on the other side of the roller. After, I refitted all the parts in reverse order of the removal. To begin, I lightly tightened this bolt. Then I adjusted the hinge with the reference marks and I tightened the bolt. Since a 13mm wrench is compatible with a half-inch drive torque wrench, I used them together to tighten the bolts to 22 Nm. This illustration shows you how I calculated the torque wrench reading to apply the torque to 22 Nm. Then I fitted and tightened the second bolt. I double-checked the position and I tightened it to specs. After, I aligned the door studs with the holes of the lower hinge. I lowered the door using the scissor jack and I inserted the studs into the hinge. Next, I refitted the nuts and I tightened them to specs. At the end, I checked if the door was closing and opening properly.
If you plan to keep the Jeep for a long time, make sure to replace the faulty lower hinge before it gets stuck open.